They announced Jason's promotion during Thursday morning's all-hands meeting at 9:47 a.m. Project director effective immediately with a compensation package that included $155,000 base salary, a $60,000 increase from his current senior engineer position. The conference room erupted in applause. I clapped along with everyone else, maintaining the same neutral expression I'd perfected over 22 years of watching less qualified people climb past me. What they didn't announce was my compensation adjustment that came later, delivered privately by Amanda Foster, our VP of Human Resources, in a hastily scheduled 3:30 p.m. meeting that lasted exactly 11 minutes. "Tyler, we want you to know how much Technocore Solutions values your contributions," Amanda said, sliding a single-page document across her desk. "Your mentorship of Jason has been invaluable to his development and our organization's success. We're pleased to offer you a loyalty recognition bonus of $8,000 payable over the next 6 months." I read the document twice. $8,000 spread over 6 months. Approximately $1,333 per month before taxes for 9 years of training the person who just received a $60,000 raise. "This is a one-time recognition payment," I said, keeping my voice level, "not a salary adjustment, that's correct. We feel this appropriately recognizes your mentorship contributions while maintaining our compensation structure integrity." I signed the acknowledgement form. Amanda seemed pleased that I hadn't argued. She had no way of knowing that I'd stopped arguing with Technocore Solutions approximately 8 months ago when I realized that competence and loyalty were liabilities in their promotion calculus, not assets. "My name is Tyler Rodriguez. I'm 47 years old, and I just watched the junior engineer I trained from day one leapfrog me into the project director position while I received what amounts to a monthly tip for 9 years of work. Before I explain what happened next, let me establish exactly what those 9 years looked like. I joined Technocore Solutions in March 2015 as a senior structural engineer with expertise in bridge design and municipal infrastructure projects. The company was mid-sized then, about 240 employees focused on providing engineering consulting to state and local governments. My role was designing safe infrastructure that helped these municipalities modernize their aging systems without compromising structural integrity. By 2015, I already had 13 years of experience in the field. I'd worked for the State Transportation Department right out of college, spent 5 years learning foundation engineering under some of the best structural engineers in the region, then moved to a private consulting firm where I specialized in bridge retrofitting projects for 6 years before Technocore recruited me with promises of career growth and technical leadership opportunities. I was 34 when I started at Technocore, already carrying the reputation as someone who could solve complex structural problems that other engineers couldn't handle. I designed the replacement spans for the Riverside County Bridge system, engineered the seismic retrofitting for the downtown Civic Center, and developed load distribution protocols that became standard practice for several municipal engineering departments. Jason Martinez joined in September 2015 as a junior engineer, fresh from State University with a civil engineering degree, and exactly 0 practical experience in load-bearing calculations or foundation engineering. He was 22 years old, enthusiastic, and completely overwhelmed by the complexity of state highway compliance requirements. His first assignment was assisting me with a bridge replacement project for the State Highway Department, a $450,000 initiative to replace the aging Riverside Avenue Bridge. I spent 8 weeks teaching him the fundamentals, how to calculate load distributions, how to specify concrete PSI requirements, how to design steel reinforcement systems that could handle heavy truck traffic. Look, the kid struggled initially. During his first month, he confused compression and tension forces in a beam analysis that would have resulted in a catastrophic design flaw. I caught it during my review and spent an entire weekend walking him through the physics of structural loading. He mixed up rebar specifications on a foundation design that would have failed inspection. I corrected it and taught him the difference between grade 40 and grade 60 steel reinforcement. He made calculation errors that would have gotten him terminated if anyone else had been reviewing his work. I covered for him, corrected his mistakes before they reached client deliverables, walked him through every engineering protocol until he understood not just the implementation, but the reasoning behind it. Spent evenings after regular work hours explaining compliance frameworks that should have been prerequisites for the position. The company had hired him straight out of college at $48,000 annually, which was standard for entry-level engineers, but they'd assigned him to projects that required years of experience to handle safely. Without proper mentorship, he would have been let go within 6 months. I became that mentorship by necessity, not by choice. By month 6, Jason was functional. He could follow design specifications without major errors and complete basic structural calculations under supervision. By month 12, he was competent enough to handle routine bridge inspections and standard foundation assessments. By year 3, he was genuinely skilled at the technical work, capable of independent project management on smaller municipal contracts. I had essentially provided him with a graduate-level education in structural engineering while maintaining my own project responsibilities and deadlines. During those first 3 years, I was carrying a full workload of senior-level projects while simultaneously training someone who should have had that education before being assigned to critical infrastructure work. Here's what made it more frustrating. Technocore was billing clients for Jason's time at senior engineer rates by year 2, despite the fact that I was still reviewing and correcting most of his work. They were making money off his development while I was providing the expertise that made that development possible. But I kept training him because I believed in doing the job right. Infrastructure engineering isn't just about meeting contract specifications. When you design a bridge, you're responsible for every person who will drive across it for the next 50 years. When you specify foundation requirements, you're ensuring that buildings won't collapse during earthquakes. This work matters in ways that most people never think about, so I taught Jason not just how to do the calculations, but why those calculations matter. I showed him how to think like an engineer, not just follow procedures like a technician. Here's the thing. During those 9 years, I guided Jason through 87 distinct municipal projects. I taught him how to design foundation systems that Technocore eventually sold as proprietary methodology to other clients. I brought him into strategy meetings with state transportation officials and coached him beforehand on how to present technical engineering concepts to non-technical government administrators. I introduced him to industry contacts that became his professional network. When Technocore won the state highway contract in 2017, a $2.8 million engagement that became our largest client relationship, I designed the initial bridge specifications that secured the deal. Jason had assisted, but the core methodology was mine. The contract came about because the state highway department needed someone who could design bridge replacements that met both current traffic loads and projected increases over the next 30 years. They'd had problems with previous contractors who submitted designs that met minimum requirements but couldn't handle capacity growth. I developed a scalable foundation system that could support additional lanes or structural modifications without requiring complete reconstruction. During the proposal presentation, I did most of the technical explanation, while Jason handled the project management timeline discussions. The state engineers asked detailed questions about load distribution algorithms, concrete curing specifications, and seismic resistance factors. I answered every question with specific calculations and material recommendations. Jason contributed by explaining how we'd coordinate with state inspection schedules and manage traffic flow during construction phases. We won the contract, but Jason got most of the credit in the company newsletter and client communications. His name appeared on the congratulations email from Ryan Williams, our CEO. My contribution was mentioned in the technical appendix as senior engineering support provided by Tyler Rodriguez. By 2020, when that contract renewed at $3.2 million annually, Jason was presenting the updated structural frameworks to the state's transportation board using designs I taught him to build. I never received credit in those board presentations. My name appeared in project documentation, buried in technical appendices as senior structural engineer, foundation design. Jason's name appeared on presentation slides as lead project engineer, strategic implementation. The pattern was consistent across every major project. I built the intellectual property. Jason delivered it to clients with the confidence and presentation skills I'd coached him to develop. State officials saw Jason in client meetings, saw his polished presentations, assumed he was the primary engineer behind the structural solutions. Here's what really started bothering me around 219. Jason began presenting design concepts in client meetings without fully understanding the engineering principles behind them. He'd memorized the talking points I'd taught him, but when clients asked follow-up questions that went beyond the prepared material, he'd defer to me with phrases like, "Tyler can provide the detailed technical specifications," or "Let me have Tyler walk you through the calculations." But to the clients, these deferrals looked like collaborative leadership rather than dependency. Jason appeared to be managing a team of technical specialists, directing expertise rather than lacking it. The clients saw a confident project manager who knew when to leverage specialized knowledge, They didn't realize he was fundamentally incapable of answering the technical questions himself. Meanwhile, my salary had increased incrementally over those years. $87,000 in 2016, $94,000 in 2018 dollars, and $102,018 by 2021 dollars. Standard cost of living adjustments with occasional merit increases. Jason's salary grew more aggressively. $48,000 to $62,000 after his first year, $78,000 by 2019, $95,000 when he was promoted to senior project engineer in 2021. By 2021, Technocore had grown to 380 employees. Jason had been promoted to senior project engineer, a lateral move to my position, despite having 7 years less experience and nowhere near my technical depth. His salary had increased to $95,000. Mine had increased to $102,000, a $7,000 difference for someone with 7 additional years of expertise and responsibility for every significant structural framework in our division. I raised this disparity with Amanda in my 2021 performance review. Her response was diplomatic but clear. Tyler, you're incredibly valuable as a technical specialist, but Jason has demonstrated client-facing skills and innovative thinking that align with our growth trajectory. We need different types of talent for different roles. Translation: Jason was better at corporate politics and executive visibility. I was better at actual structural engineering. Technocore valued the former more than the latter. What specific innovations has Jason contributed? I asked. Amanda consulted her notes. His leadership on the downtown infrastructure modernization project resulted in early completion and client satisfaction ratings above 90%. His communication with state regulatory officials has streamlined our approval processes. His project management approach has improved our delivery timelines across multiple contracts. Every example she cited was either my technical work presented by Jason or administrative improvements that any competent engineer could implement. The downtown infrastructure modernization was a foundation stabilization project where I designed the underpinning system that prevented the historic courthouse from settling. Jason had managed the paperwork and client communications. The streamlined approval processes came from relationships I'd built with state inspectors over 15 years in the industry. Jason leveraged those relationships but didn't create them. And what about my contributions during the same period? I asked. Tyler, you're absolutely essential to our technical capabilities. The engineering frameworks you've developed are fundamental to our competitive advantage. That's why we value your mentorship so highly. I stopped pushing for promotions after that conversation. Instead, I focused on documenting everything. Every framework I designed, every methodology I developed, every client relationship I maintained, every hour I spent training Jason and the 6 other junior engineers who'd rotated through our division. Because I understood something that Amanda and the rest of Technocore's executive team apparently didn't. Institutional knowledge is only valuable when the institution can retain it. I started keeping detailed records of my contributions to every project. When I designed load-bearing specifications, I documented not just the final calculations, but the reasoning process behind them. When I developed new testing protocols, I recorded both the methodology and the problem-solving approach that led to the solution. When I trained junior engineers, I logged the specific knowledge transfers and their learning outcomes. I also began paying attention to how Jason performed in technical situations without my direct support. During a 2022 inspection of the Riverside Bridge extension, Jason couldn't explain to the state inspector why we'd specified grade 80 rebar in the foundation instead of the standard grade 60. The inspector was questioning whether our design met seismic requirements, and Jason kept deflecting to review the engineering documentation instead of explaining that grade 80 was necessary for the soil conditions and expected load factors in that specific location. I had to join the inspection call and walk the inspector through the decision matrix that led to the grade 80 specification. After the call, Jason thanked me for backing up the team rather than acknowledging that he should have been able to handle that explanation himself. These situations became more frequent as Jason took on higher-profile projects. He was excellent at presenting completed work and managing project timelines, but whenever technical questions arose that weren't covered in the prepared materials, he needed my expertise to maintain credibility with clients. The emergency client call happened Friday morning at 6:18 a.m. The State Highway Department's Chief Inspector, Nathan Cooper, had discovered a critical structural issue with the Riverside Bridge extension project, stress fractures in the support beams that conflicted with our load-bearing specifications. The inspection reports we'd submitted were showing calculation patterns that didn't align with the actual foundation work, and Nathan couldn't determine whether the structural failure originated from design flaws or construction errors. This wasn't just a technical problem, this was a potential safety crisis. The Riverside Bridge extension carried approximately 45,000 vehicles daily, including heavy commercial trucks transporting goods between the industrial district and the interstate. Stress fractures in support beams could indicate fundamental structural instability that might lead to catastrophic failure under peak load conditions. Nathan had shut down 2 of the 4 lanes immediately and was demanding immediate technical review of our entire design methodology. The state was considering emergency bridge closure pending structural assessment, which would reroute traffic through residential areas and cost the city an estimated $280,000 daily in commercial delays. Jason called me at 6:25 a.m., voice tight with panic. "Tyler, I need you on this call immediately. Nathan is asking technical questions about the foundation calculations, and I can't explain the load distribution logic. He's threatening to shut down the entire bridge and report us to state regulators for potential design negligence." I was already awake, drinking coffee in my kitchen, reading industry news on my tablet. My reading glasses were on the counter next to my blood pressure medication. Reminders that I wasn't the 29-year-old who'd started at Technocore anymore. At 47, I'd handled enough structural crises to know that panic doesn't solve engineering problems. Methodical analysis does. I let the phone ring 3 times before answering. What specifically is he asking about? The steel reinforcement specifications for the main support structure. He's saying our load calculations failed to account for the stress fractures, and he wants to know why our multi-layer safety protocols didn't prevent the structural failure. I don't know how to explain the engineering decision tree. This was exactly the kind of technical crisis that separated real engineers from people who'd memorized procedures. The stress fracture patterns Nathan was describing could result from several factors: inadequate concrete curing time, incorrect rebar placement, foundation settling due to soil conditions, or thermal expansion calculations that didn't account for seasonal temperature variations. I knew exactly how to explain it because I designed that reinforcement system in 2018 and spent 4 weeks teaching Jason the structural reasoning behind using progressive load distribution for heavy traffic bridges. The decision tree involved analyzing soil compression data, calculating dynamic load factors for truck traffic, and specifying steel grades that could handle both static loads and cyclical stress from temperature changes. Jason had apparently forgotten all of it. "I'll be on the call," I said. "Send me the meeting link." At 6:29 a.m., I joined the video conference. 116 people from the State Highway Department's engineering team. Jason looking exhausted and stressed. Nathan Cooper looking furious and extremely concerned about public safety. "Tyler, thank God," Jason said when my video connected. "Nathan has some technical questions about the structural failure protocols." Nathan didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Mr. Rodriguez, your engineering design failed to prevent stress fractures in our bridge support system. Before we discuss terminating this contract and filing regulatory reports with federal transportation authorities, I need to understand why your load calculations allowed these structural failures to occur." I opened my laptop, pulled up the engineering documentation, began walking Nathan through the technical reasoning for every design decision. The stress fractures he was seeing weren't design flaws. They were indicating foundation settlement that should have been caught during the construction phase inspection process. "Nathan, the fracture patterns you're describing suggest differential settlement in the eastern foundation pier. Our design specifications called for concrete pours in 12-hour intervals with 48-hour curing between layers. If the contractor accelerated that timeline or didn't maintain consistent temperature control during curing, you'd see exactly these stress indicators." I spent 31 minutes explaining structural engineering concepts to a room full of state inspectors and compliance officers. How thermal expansion coefficients interact with steel grade specifications. Why foundation settlement creates predictable stress patterns in properly designed reinforcement systems. How to distinguish between design inadequacy and construction execution problems. Nathan's questions were getting more specific and technical as we progressed. What about the load distribution calculations for the dynamic loading from heavy truck traffic? Are you confident the grade 80 rebar can handle cyclical stress over the 50-year design life? Absolutely. The grade 80 specification provides a safety factor of 2.8 for the maximum expected load conditions, including dynamic amplification from truck traffic and seismic considerations. The stress fractures indicate construction quality issues, not design inadequacy. I recommend core sampling the concrete in the eastern pier to verify compression strength and curing quality. Halfway through this explanation, I realized something fundamental. I was doing exactly what I'd done for 9 years. Solving problems that Jason couldn't solve. Maintaining client relationships that Jason couldn't manage. Providing expertise that Technocore valued at $8,000 while paying Jason $155,000 to take credit for it. Look, I'd been here before countless times. Jason stumbles during a client presentation. I step in with the technical details. Jason can't answer a structural question. I provide the methodology explanation. Jason needs help with compliance documentation. I walk him through the requirements. For 9 years, I'd been his safety net, his technical backup, his institutional memory, and Technocore just announced they valued that safety net at $8,000 minus less than what some people spend on a vacation. The state inspector was still asking questions about foundation design principles. Jason was nodding along but contributing nothing substantive to the conversation. Everyone in that meeting understood that I was the technical authority responsible for the engineering decisions, while Jason was essentially a project coordinator who'd been promoted into a position requiring expertise he didn't possess. At 7 a.m., while explaining the steel grade specifications for the 4th time to a state engineer who still didn't understand the tension algorithms, I made a decision that would change everything. This wasn't just about my compensation anymore. This was about professional integrity. I'd spent 22 years building expertise that kept bridges from collapsing and buildings from falling down. I'd trained Jason to present that expertise to clients while Technocore systematically undervalued the person who actually generated it. They wanted Jason to be the face of engineering projects he couldn't defend technically. They wanted me to be the invisible technical support that made Jason's presentations credible. They valued presentation skills over engineering competence and expected me to subsidize that philosophy with my expertise. I was done subsidizing it. I stopped talking mid-sentence, closed my laptop, looked directly into the camera. Nathan, I apologize, but I need to step away from this call. Jason can address your remaining questions. The silence was immediate and absolute. You could see the confusion on Nathan's face, the panic on Jason's. The realization dawning on everyone that the person who actually understood the engineering was leaving the person who'd been promoted to explain it. Tyler, wait, Jason said, his voice cracking slightly. I disconnected from the call. I shut down my laptop, walked upstairs to my bedroom where my wife Sarah was getting ready for work. You're home early, she said, confused. I thought you had that emergency state highway call. I did. I left. You left? I left in the middle of explaining something that Jason should be able to explain himself if he's worth $155,000 as project director. Sarah sat down on the bed, watching me carefully. At 45, she'd seen me come home from work frustrated more times than either of us cared to count. But this was different. This was me finally drawing a line. What are you doing, Tyler? Something I should have done 8 months ago when I realized this company values presentation skills over actual competence. I'm not covering for Jason anymore. If he can't answer state highway questions about structural engineering, that's Technocore's problem, not mine. At 7:42 a.m., my phone started ringing. Jason. I declined the call. At 7:49 a.m., text message from Jason. Tyler, please call me back. Nathan is asking questions I can't answer, and he's threatening to shut down the entire bridge and report us to federal transportation authorities for design negligence. I didn't respond. By 8:30 a.m., I'd received 14 calls and 23 text messages from various people at Technocore. I turned my phone to airplane mode and went for a walk around the neighborhood. Here's what I learned later about what was happening at Technocore while I was walking. Jason couldn't answer Nathan's technical questions. He tried to deflect, to schedule follow-up calls, to promise detailed written responses. Nathan Cooper wasn't accepting deflections. He wanted immediate answers about the structural failure, or he was shutting down the bridge and filing regulatory complaints with federal transportation authorities. Without me on the call, Jason had no answers. He tried to explain the load calculations and got the structural logic wrong. He said the stress fractures were within acceptable parameters when they clearly indicated foundation problems that required immediate attention. He tried to defend the design specifications and contradicted the engineering documentation. By 8:43 a.m., Nathan had ended the call and emailed Technocore's CEO, Ryan Williams, formally notifying him that the State Highway Department was suspending all ongoing work pending a comprehensive engineering audit and possible federal investigation for design negligence. Suspending work on a $2.8 million project gets CEO attention very quickly. By 9:25 a.m., Ryan had called an emergency executive meeting. By 10:12 a.m., they determined they needed me on a call with the state to salvage the relationship. At 11:44 a.m., someone knocked on my front door. Amanda Foster standing on my porch in business attire, looking stressed. "Tyler, we need to talk. Ryan needs you to join a call with Nathan Cooper at 2 p.m. today. The state is threatening to terminate the contract and file federal regulatory complaints unless we can provide satisfactory answers to their engineering questions." That's unfortunate. Jason is the project director. Surely he should be capable of addressing technical questions about structural systems he's been presenting to the state for the past 4 years. "Tyler, we both know you designed those systems. Then perhaps Technocore should have considered that before promoting Jason to director and offering me an $8,000 loyalty bonus. This isn't about your compensation. This is about a $2.8 million client relationship and possible regulatory violations. No, Amanda, this is exactly about my compensation. You decided that 9 years of building the intellectual property that generates $2.8 million in revenue is worth $8,000. While the person who learned everything from me gets $155,000 to present my work. Now you get to live with the consequences." I closed the door before she could respond. The 2:00 p.m. call happened without me. Jason attempted to answer Nathan's questions again, got the engineering protocols wrong again, and Nathan ended the call after 26 minutes. The State Highway Department formally terminated their contract at 3:15 p.m. and filed preliminary regulatory complaints about Technocore's engineering practices. Over the weekend, I contacted 7 former colleagues who'd left Technocore for competitor firms. By Monday, I had 3 formal interview requests. By Tuesday, I had 2 preliminary compensation discussions starting above $125,000 with better bonus structures than Technocore had ever offered. Ryan Williams called an emergency meeting Tuesday morning. He offered me $118,000 to stay and fix their state highway problem, while Jason kept his $155,000 director title. You're trying to correct this after losing a $2.8 million client because you promoted someone who couldn't defend his own work without my assistance. That's crisis management, not compensation philosophy. I walked out at 8:31 a.m., cleaned out my desk, and drove home. By Wednesday, I had 2 formal job offers. The best came from Regional Infrastructure Solutions, $142,000 base salary, 30% performance bonuses, full benefits, and a $15,000 signing bonus. They wanted someone who could design structural frameworks for government projects, someone who understood technical requirements and had relationships with potential clients. I started the following Monday. Here's what happened at Technocore after I left. Without my technical expertise, Jason couldn't rebuild the state highway relationship. Nathan refused to engage with him directly. 5 weeks after I joined Regional Infrastructure, the State Highway Department moved their engineering contract to my new company. Nathan called me directly and asked if Regional could provide the technical sophistication I'd previously delivered. 3 weeks later, we had a $3.1 million contract with the state minus $300,000 more than Technocore had been charging, but that wasn't all. Over the next 8 months, 3 other major municipal clients reduced or terminated their contracts with Technocore. Each situation followed the same pattern. Technical questions Jason couldn't answer, structural performance issues he couldn't diagnose, compliance concerns he couldn't address. Technocore's revenue dropped by $4.2 million in the first year after I left. They hired 2 new senior engineers, but institutional knowledge doesn't transfer instantly. The frameworks I'd built over 9 years took years to replicate. Jason lasted 8 months without my technical support. His limitations became obvious to everyone. He was demoted to senior engineer at $78,000, a $77,000 pay cut, then resigned 4 months later. Last I heard, he was doing basic structural analysis at a regional firm, making $68,000. I don't take pleasure in Jason's difficulties. He was competent with proper guidance. His mistake was accepting a promotion into a position requiring expertise he didn't possess while allowing Technocore to undervalue the person who provided that expertise. At 47, I'm making more than I ever thought possible. 16 months later, I was promoted to Senior Director of Municipal Engineering at $167,000. 2 years after that, Vice President of Infrastructure Development at $156,000 plus equity. Technocore wanted to pay me like a supporting actor while giving Jason the director's salary. They learned expensively that I wasn't supporting anyone's performance. I was the performance. Jason was reading a script I'd written for 9 years. Sometimes the best lesson you can teach people is how expensive their disrespect really costs. The moment you stop being indispensable to those who refuse to value you properly, you become invaluable to those who understand what you actually bring to the table. 22 years of experience taught me that competence without recognition is just unpaid consulting. Now I work somewhere that knows the difference. Your institutional knowledge isn't just your job security, it's your leverage. The day you realize they need your expertise more than you need their approval is the day you take back control of your career. Companies will mistake your loyalty for weakness until the moment you stop providing it. Then they discover the difference between someone who can present your work and someone who can actually do it.
Don't pity me. My heart doesn't need your mercy. I can still stand on my own. I was broken by your leaving, fell deeper than I thought I would. But pain has taught me how to heal now and survive what once I couldn't. You don't have to look back sadly, don't reach out with guilty hands. What you shattered made me stronger. Now I rise where I once collapsed. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow, I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling, I'll learn to breathe again. I once begged for your affection, now I've learned my worth in scars. And the man you left in pieces found his own way through the dark. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow, I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling, I'll learn to breathe again. So keep your sympathy behind you, I don't need what's left undone. Sometimes losing who once broke you is how healing has begun. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow, I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling, I'll rise alone again. I'll rise alone again. Some days feel off, like I'm standing but still falling. A little pain, a little tired, and no one to tell it all to. There are days that feel unsteady, like I'm drifting out of place. Every step just feels so heavy, with a smile I have to fake. A little hurt I keep inside me, a little weight I always hide, and 1,000 quiet worries I've been holding deep inside. There's no one here to tell it to, no one who would understand. So I carry all these feelings like they're slipping through my hands. A little broken, little lost, trying hard to just get through. All these nights I stay awake with everything I never say to you. I keep walking through the silence like it's all I've ever known. Every crowded room reminds me how it feels to be alone. There's no one here to tell it to, no one who would understand. So I carry all these feelings like they're slipping through my hands. A little broken, little lost, trying hard to just get through. All these nights I stay awake with everything I never say to you. Maybe one day I'll be stronger, maybe I'll learn how to speak, but for now I keep it buried in the parts of me too weak. There's no one here to tell it to, no one who would understand. So I carry all these feelings like they're slipping through my hands. A little broken, little lost, trying hard to just get through. All these nights I stay awake with everything I never say to you.